BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with Sean K.
Alright, so this is BSing with Sean K. I'm your host, Sean Kneese. Today I'm going to play you an interview I did with spoken word poet, disabilities rights activist, graphic novelist, and youth organizer Eman Rimawi. And to give a little backstory, I recently, a couple episodes ago, I interviewed Viviana Duncan, who hosts the Stark Reality Open Mic Night in New York City. And that's sort of an anything goes, anything, no censorship open mic venue. And I recently filmed the documentary on that open mic night and wrote an article in the last BSing with Sean K newsletter on it. And the featured performer that night was Eman Rimawi. So Eman works with many nonprofits in New York City, including the Audre Lorde Project, and Casa Atabek and the Jed Foundation. And she's an educator and teaches creative writing, community organizing, political science, and history workshops for youth in New York City. And between 2013 and 2014, Rimawi experienced problems with her health and as a result lost both her legs. And after this, she started an organization called Amped Up, a clothing line for and by amputees, and has written children's books and graphic novels where disabled people are the main characters. So it took a while to get this interview recorded. We had a lot of it. Also, we couldn't. We originally wanted to record it in person, but there was a lot of trouble with the weather. So we were gonna do it over Google Chat and broadcast it live, and there was some technical difficulties with that didn't quite work out. And then we were going to record it over Skype, but then the Skype recorder that I usually use was having a lot of problems. So after about an hour of technical difficulties, we finally found a way to record it. I recorded her through Audacity, and I recorded my own voice through Evernote, and it ended up sounding pretty good. So we persevered, and we got it done. And I'll let the rest of the interview... I'll just let the interview speak for itself with everything else. And, here it is. I hope you enjoy it. So we improvised.
Indeed. Gotta do in life sometimes.
So here we are BSing with Sean K and Eman Rimawi.
Yes, Eman Rimawi.
Eman Rimawi.
Yes.
So, do you want to tell us about yourself, I guess? Or,
Sure. Well, if anybody can see the video eventually with all of our sounds together, I am a native New Yorker, grew up here, been here my entire life. I've tried to move several times, but it just never worked out. Something kept me in New York time and time again, so I'm still here. I love cats. That's what I was mentioning. If you could see me, I have my kitty ears, my headphones on. I work at the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest doing disability justice work because people often treat folks that are elderly and disabled like we're garbage. And I don't really like that. And so I just try to use my big, smart mouth in doing my disability justice work. And I'm also a double amputee. I've been an amputee about 4 years. Above knee and below knee, and I'm still learning new things about it, new processes, because it's not like you know all the things about what it's like to be an amputee unless you lose your limb. And so this is definitely still in the amputee world. I'm still a complete baby and a newbie, and rightfully so, because learning how to bend a mechanical knee takes practice and work. And I'm the oldest of three, well, four, but three, between my both my parents. I drink a ton of coffee all the time. I don't know what else. There's so many things about me that are just interesting and crazy and fun and cool and weird. And I always tell folks that, like, me being an amputee is not the weirdest thing about me. I can tell you that much. And I am way more than just an amputee or just somebody with a disability. So,
And that's what you're trying to show, like, in a lot of your poems, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because, people think when you have even before I lost my legs, I had leg braces for like 3 or 4 years because I have an aggressive form of lupus. And things happen to me that don't normally happen to other people with lupus. And I didn't consider myself disabled back then, even though I was paralyzed from the neck down and had to relearn how to walk and then had leg braces. And I bounced back, but I was like, oh, it's okay. As long as I have my braces on, it's not a big deal. Whatever. I'm not really disabled, even though everyone around me considered me disabled. And so it took me losing my limbs, sort of going through the stages of grief to let it go and not necessarily reinvent myself, but accept myself. That's when I really learned that being disabled is not a bad thing. It's not I'm not less than. I'm not, just a throwaway. I'm actually better than I was when I still had my legs. So it's not, it took me losing my legs to actually be genuinely happy. I think I was faking it a lot in my 20s. To sort of save, I guess, like to make sure other people were okay. I had to be okay. But then when I realized when I was like 29 and started to go through all this, I was like, wow, I just need to be happy for me. And if other people aren't okay with that, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell them. But I can honestly say that I am genuinely in a much better place than I was before. So
it made you more sure of yourself, I guess, or maybe you take less for granted, or you value, I don't know.
I think it just made me be more of a real person. Like I wouldn't really, and I still struggle with this, like being honest and open with folks about how I'm feeling and what I'm doing and how I'm doing and all that stuff. I used to just be like, I'm fine all the time. And now I'm more honest about it, being like, no, I am not fine all the time. I'm not Superwoman. I don't, honestly, in my opinion, I don't owe anybody shit. And if I have to do things to take care of myself, then I need to do that. And now I'm 33. I'll be 34 in April. And I feel like it took me sort of like growing up and becoming more of an adult to actually adult in a better way. And I still have tons of things to work on. I'm constantly on the journey to better self-discovery and not necessarily adulting better, but being the kind of person that I want other people to be. Just being that and hoping that my actions inspire other people to not be dicks. No one is on an island by themselves. We need each other to exist and to survive. And if anybody thinks that they're on an island by themselves, they should actually go to an island and be by themselves. We all need each other. And the same goes for being disabled. If you asked me 4 years ago if I was going to be an amputee, I would have been like, that's never going to happen. It goes for anybody. Anybody at any time can join the disability club. No one is exempt from it, ever. And my lupus didn't start to get insane until I was 25 or 26. But it doesn't have to be that. I know tons of amputees who got hit by cars. There are tons of people in wheelchairs that got into car accidents or had a bad fall on a trip or whatever. And so, some folks are like, oh, were you born that? No, I wasn't. I didn't come out of my mother's womb with metal legs on. That's not how that works. And, it's just like people automatically assume that you're either a saint, or you don't have a personality, or you don't have bills to pay, as if the government suddenly like, oh, here, you're disabled, you get no, you get shit, you get nothing. And I was told that because I wasn't mentally incapacitated, I couldn't get help. And I'm like, okay, so you guys are going to help me get a job? No, that's your responsibility. Oh, so if people want to discriminate against me and just say you're not qualified, but really they don't want someone. When I was still in a wheelchair, I was looking. If they want to discriminate against me, they can, and the government just doesn't give a shit because they think they're exempt from everything too. It's just like, sometimes I'm like, well, I could just go to another country, except I was born in the U.S. Why should I go someplace else just to make my life better when I can stay here and make life better for myself and for other people? So, and I go on tangents a lot because my coffee is still pretty.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's kind of the style on the show. I kind of let people go on their tangents, and then but so you're saying that there's really not a lot of representation for people who are disabled, like in the U.S. Like,
I mean, there's some, and folks think that like when you're young and disabled, you can all of a sudden join the Paralympics and run a bunch of track and do all this stuff on a wheelchair. It's just super cool. It's awesome. Not everybody has that physical ability to do that, whether you're disabled or not. And if I can't physically do something, I don't want for someone else to feel like, or if I can do something physically, I don't want someone to feel like, oh, well, I can't, so I don't deserve this, or I shouldn't get that. Or it's the idea of disability in this country is, let's just put them all in a back room, in a closet, in a nursing home, and not think about it. And as someone who has been in nursing home rehab places twice, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm not going back ever. Ever. Yeah.
And people just like throw away their parents too sometimes.
They throw their parents away thinking that they're doing the right thing for them. Yeah. When it's not, and I'm not just speaking from it as an outside observer. I'm speaking from it as someone who has been in these places. And even a few years ago, this was actually over 4 years ago. I was in my first year of being an amputee, and even some state folks came through, and I told them about all the illegal shit that was going on. And they said, okay, we'll investigate it. And nothing happened. Nothing changed. So I'm just like, wow, y'all don't care as long as you get paid, as long as the nursing home gets paid, as long as...
abuse or... What do you mean illegal?
There was... People were randomly being drugged to calm them down when they seemed like a problem. And they did the same thing to me, too. And I did not appreciate being drugged without my permission, or just because they wanted me to calm down, and that scared the shit out of me. I was like, wait, I thought I'm taking a baby aspirin and you're giving me something else? And it took me a good 2.5 days to feel like myself again. And it was solely because I was giving the people in the nursing home advice when they'd ask me. And it's not like I'm going to be like, oh, I don't know. I've been a community organizer since I was 16. So if I see someone struggling with something, if I see someone going through anything, I'm going to try to help them.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that at all. And so
that's why they drugged you as a there was no way to expose these people or anything, or?
No, when you go into a rehab place,
we can expose their names right now on this podcast. I don't know.
I mean, it was Oxford Nursing Home in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. Fuck them.
Yeah, hey, Oxford Nursing Home, fuck you. We're exposing you, calling you out.
No, and I would put stuff up on Facebook all the time. I would take pictures of the aides sleeping in the corner, I would freaking post a whole bunch of shit. I would tell them about all this stuff going on, and nothing happened because it was like 95% elderly people there, and then like a sprinkle of folks that were close to my age, but there weren't that many, and so they were all drugged up all the time. And when I left, they were letting in folks, random people from homeless shelters, which is fine. Everybody needs a home, but you can't put people in there who have mental illnesses with folks that are just elderly, because I heard that a lot of violent things were going on and they weren't doing anything about it. And I'm like, wow, y'all just really don't give a shit, huh? It's just, it's amazing to me that this country, that's America, is so awesome. When my dad came to this country, he was so thrilled to be here. He was like, I'm going to be the best American ever, blah. But if my dad was still alive and he saw what was going on in this country, he'd be like, wow, this is the country I came to. A country that not only can elect Trumpicana and his bullshit, but doesn't care about people when they're ill or when they're in their 60s or 70s. Like, what are we working towards? What are we living for? If not to take care of the people in need and also make sure that nobody gets left behind or forgotten. And I feel like in every community, whether it's the African American community or Palestinian community or women's community or LGBT community or anything, disability is always left out. And because people aren't even thinking about it. And I wasn't thinking about it 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
I noticed, like, in nursing homes, they kind of talk to the people like they're little kids or something, too, even if they're not doing stuff that extreme, yeah.
And I fucking hate that. Yeah. I hate that with a passion. People do that to me now. Yeah. And I'm just like, are you talking to me like that? Oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I'm like, okay, let me go ask the lawyers that I work with in our office and get back to you on that. And that's like such a disrespectful thing to infantilize. Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm not a fucking child.
Yeah.
Elderly folks are fucking children. No, even if it was someone with like dementia or Alzheimer's or having some sort of other mental illness, you still don't belittle someone and talk to them like they're a fucking child. Unless they're a fucking child.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me that even happens. But I think it's because we're looked at as useless, then we're treated like we're useless. Yeah. And I just don't understand. I don't understand how people, even before I was an amputee, even before my lupus was diagnosed, years and years ago, my dad always taught me, respect people, treat them like they're human beings. And that's where I begin and end. And so I talk to everyone the same way. Like, people get the same me all the time. And some folks are like, oh, well, how could you be friends with people? Excuse me? What do you mean, how can I be friends with people like that? What do you mean? What do you mean by people like that?
Yeah.
Or you people? I fucking hate that too. Yeah. And it's just like, people, unfortunately, folks don't see that they're being discriminatory when they say you people. But they are. And, you know, folks need to... I did this interview a few months ago on WBAI about the ARG campaign that I'm working on. And I was just like, the bottom line is disabled people are not non-people. We have lives too. We have everything going on with us, regardless of what it is, the same exact way. So why would you treat them different from the way you're treated? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And some folks are just like, oh, well, you know, it's because they are different. No, I'm not. I'm still a woman. I'm still young-ish. I still have a job. I still have bills. I still have so many things going on. So how could I be different from you when the only difference is our legs. Like, it just, or if someone's in a wheelchair, the only difference is someone's in a wheelchair. Like, that's the only difference between us, and you're making such a big deal out of it. It's ridiculous, but I mean, I'm not sure how other countries are, and I know some countries I'd probably be dead already. But like, I just can't stand for that kind of disrespectful bullshit. Like, I'm just not down with it, and I don't like it or appreciate it, not only for myself, but for anyone else.
Yeah, why do you think that is? That like people look away? Like it's just something people don't want to deal with, that they don't want to face. Like that could happen to them, or I don't know.
No, I don't think that. Not only that they don't want to deal with it, is that they don't think that they're ever going to be affected by it at all. And so I remember what I was like when I was 14 or 15, and I thought nothing. I'd live forever. I'd be young forever. Nothing's ever going to happen to me ever. And that's like the biggest crock of bullshit ever. Like, we're human beings. We can have something happen at any time. And, you know, people only ignore me when I'm walking down the street and they have to rush past me. But most of the time, people are just staring at me in a way that, like, for example, if I go into a bar or go into a restaurant or something, it's like the record stops when I come in the place. And I just have to be all like, yeah, I know I look good today, so that's why y'all looking at me. But that's not it. They're looking at my legs, and they're looking at my walker. And it's just like, most days, I'm like, whatever. I don't give a shit. I don't care. You're looking. I know I look good. That's it. Some days, I'm like, look at me again, and I'm going to show you how we do in Jamaica, Queens. Because I'm not feeling it. And sometimes it's like some days, or after I have a long day at work and I just want to go down the street to get a drink or whatever, like, people are just always like, oh, so good for you. What's good for me? Like, what are you talking about? You wouldn't say that to anyone else, but you feel the need to go out of your way to make me seem like an exceptional person because I'm going for a drink after work. Only because of my legs. And it just drives me crazy. It's just like, if you wouldn't say that to anyone else, don't fix your face to say that to me. Because it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me that you would feel the need to single me out. And it's like, fine, great. I'm an anomaly. I get it. Fine. But if I'm just being a person and you're being a person and we're someplace spending money being people, just be a fucking person to me. Like, there's nothing special about me going and having a freaking a glass of wine at a place. How's that special? Is it because that you don't see that there are more disabilities around than you think? Like, tons of invisible disabilities too? Or is it that you just think that I should be, because I'm not institutionalized, I'm suddenly special or different, but I'm not the only one out living my life. Like, I'm not an exception. It's just people need to open their minds to it. Like, even before I started using Accessoride, I never saw those vehicles, even though they were around. I didn't see them until I started using them. And it's like, okay, now I see them. And so when people have their rose-colored glasses on and they're not paying attention to what's actually there, it's not. I am quite sure that there are a lot more invisible disabilities going on than people realize and or will admit.
So how did you get started with poetry? I know you started like in your teens, but like what did you start writing about? What motivated you to write?
So I actually started writing when I was around like 11 or 12. I had to write some, you know, like in middle school when they're like, oh, you know, write about what you see outside, or write about this book that you read, or whatever. And I started writing, and I was just like, wow, I actually kind of like this. This is okay. I can get down with this. And I kept telling my dad that I was going to be a veterinarian because I love animals so much. You know, especially cats, you know. And I I kept telling him, I'll be a veterinarian. And then he had this girlfriend that told me about crazy chihuahuas, and it sort of scared me away from doing that, because she was telling me these very insane stories about these chihuahuas, and I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want chihuahuas biting up my hands. And at the same time, I was like reading so much, and I was writing everything all the time and making up stories just out of nowhere. And I remember when I told my dad, I had to be like 13. This was like a year or two before he passed. I was like, Daddy, I'm going to be a writer. And he was like, how are you going to make money doing that? I was like, I will. I'll show you. I will make money. And funny enough, years later, I was like selling little chapbooks of the poetry readings and stuff, and like putting and having it put out there so that people could really get it, and like recording my performances and all this stuff. And you know, I'm sure from wherever in the ether wherever he is, he, you know, is proud of whatever accomplishments. But I started my writing as a sort of like as my journaling at first, and then it took like a whole other, like it took a whole other form of like being poetry and being stories. And I still sort of have a vivid imagination, and I would have these crazy dreams sometimes, and I'd be like, what the heck is this? And I'd wake up immediately and just start writing and writing and writing, whatever the story was, or whatever parallel universe I happened to be in my dream. I'm like convinced that like I'm fighting demons in a parallel universe in my sleep, only because every time I wake up I have bruises all over my body, and I'm just like, I don't know how else this would show up. But it does. And so I don't know how real that is, but who knows? I think it is, and it is what it is. But I would write a lot of sci-fi stuff and lots of gory, violent, bloody, crazy stuff too.
Like
but
horror kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was like horror, but it was like psychological stuff too. Like,
nice.
You know, like.
So you kind of go like both way, like fiction and then nonfiction.
Yeah, and like I would write a lot of that when I was a teenager, because I was up late all the time and just like fiercely writing, and the computer was just like getting popular, and the internet was getting popular around then, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna keep on writing, and whatever comes out, it comes out, and it'll be awesome. And you know, I got into the more political writing when I was like 16, because I was, you know, people think that like all this like police brutality and this racial tension and all this stuff is new. It's not new. Smartphones are new. That's the only thing that's new. People can actually capture it. But before that, I would just see stuff on the news or see stuff in my neighborhood. And it bothered the heck out of me that like the world was like this, that because I'm lighter skinned, I get treated differently from my brother and sister or my mother. And I had to verbalize it, and I had to let it out there, and I had to be like, look, this is not. And I remember one of the first poems I performed, I had to be 15 or 16. And I was in this poetry performance group called Reverb. And I was always a spunky kid. I was always you know, because of how I grew up, like I read a lot. I wore weird outfits. I had my goth phase. Like it was, you know, the usual teenagey stuff. And so people just thought I was a smart weirdo in high school, but they didn't think that I was like such a force with the poetry or anything. And I remember when I did this poem called Rage, and people were stunned that I had such a powerful presence and a powerful voice. And I just remember I'm on the stage, and I like jump off the stage, and the first 5 rows like jump back. And I'm just like, you guys are so funny. Like, what did you think? Like, I wasn't gonna like go 100%, and I did. And after that, I was just like, it was Richmond Hill High School in Queens. It wasn't like a freaking big deal because my dad didn't want me going to Manhattan. So I got accepted to the School of Performing Arts in Manhattan. And my dad was like, I don't want you to ride the train by yourself. And I was like, really? Really? And then I just stayed at Richmond, which, whatever, wasn't a big deal because I still got to do what I was doing there. And that's when when I had that performance when I was 15, like that's when I really found that bug in me that I like loved to perform and I loved being on stage and it made me feel so alive and so like you could see me. Okay. And you know, I miss like I when I was hosting those poetry readings with Viviana and Frank and Camilo, like it was some of the best times of my life being just performing, and that kept me writing constantly, like because it was in my face a couple times a week, every week, consistently. That kept me writing, even while I was going through all this stuff with my health and my life and my schooling and my jobs and my living situations. Like I was always going through all this stuff, but I kept it as a constant. And then it sort of fell off a little bit because I had so much stuff going on. And writing for me was always completely brutally honest. And I couldn't be honest with myself about how I felt about how my life was going. And so I just stopped with the writing altogether. And then when I started writing again, probably when I was like 29 or 30, I recognized that. I wasn't really like completely conscious that I was doing that, being like, okay, I write and I'm going to be honest with it all the time. And I stopped writing because I couldn't be honest with myself about how I felt. And it took me a while to like recognize that I was doing that. But when I did, I was actually, it sort of made some of my writing better. It brought me back to when I was a teenager and how I was being with my writing at the time. And I still, like I was saying much earlier, I still struggle with that sometimes. Like being honest on paper about the way my life has been. And it goes back to like not necessarily grieving parts of my life, but remembering it in an honest and open way so that other people can get something from it. Because sometimes people automatically assume that I can be like, I can be there for everybody all the time, 100%. And it's just like, well, I can try to be there for everybody 100% of the time, but I don't know if I can. And so if I can be there for people like 70 or 80% of the time, and that's what I can do, and I can do it through my writing, then I can do that. I just feel like sometimes with the writing, it's got to be coming from an honest, truthful place. And if it's not, then people can sort of tell that it's not, or that it's not going to be good writing, or it's not going to be a good enough story to tell. And like, for example, like I've been working on the book about my life, and I've been working on it since I was 17. And so that shows that not only have I had a lot of stories come up over the years, but that it's been hard for me to tell these stories. And I feel like one example is like the chapter about like the day my father passed and all the things that transpired through that day. And it's very clinical the way I write it down, as opposed to writing from my heart, because maybe I don't want to feel those things or think about those things. And I feel like I'll get there eventually. Maybe I need to stay home one day, have a whole bottle or two of wine, and just snap away and get up on it. Because sometimes, like my dad often told me, if I saw something wrong, fix it. And he set me up to be like sort of like a soldier. in this whole fight for life. And so in my mind, being a soldier means you always have to be strong and tough. You can't be weak. You can't cry about shit. And you can't let anyone else see your weaknesses. And when I think that way, it takes away from all the things that I'm feeling and all the things that I'm going through, and also makes it hard for me to put my stuff out there, even in an artistic form, even if it's going to help people, because my dad thought crying was weak, even though it's not. And theoretically, I know it's not, but I still struggle with seeing past that and recognizing that it doesn't make me weak and moving forward with that. And who knows how long it's going to take me. I've been trying to get back to my teenage voice for a long time, and eventually I'll get there. It's just going to take me some time. But I mean, I love writing. I love writing, and I always feel I wanted to be a writer from when I started when I was 11, and part of me is like, oh, nobody wants to see my writing, but like a lot of people want to see my writing, and it's not just because of my experiences and whatever identities I have and the things that I've gone through, but I you know, as you saw from my performance the other day, I put a bunch of little stories in between all my poetry. I'm a smart ass all the time. I can't really turn that off. And people like it when I bring humor to an otherwise fucked up situation, because some people can't deal with sad things. And I know I have a struggle. I struggle with dealing with sad things sometimes, and so I bring my smartassness in it, and hope that people realize that like I'm talking about whatever the issue is, but I'm also making sure that we can laugh through this struggle, because it sucks and it's hard, and that doesn't mean that I can't laugh about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I guess this book that you're talking about that you're saying like you're working on the book about your life. Like, is that one you plan to release like in the future, or what?
Yeah, you know, I keep on it. I keep on working on it, and I pick it up and put it down and pick it up since I was 17, and I'm gonna be 34 soon. So like, it's been a long journey, and I think eventually I'll finish it. It might take a few more years. It might take more stories. It might take a ton of editing. It might take, like I said, a couple bottles of wine and just getting at my feelings and doing it. But it's gonna take that, and I feel like I have to really get at the truth of how it felt, of how all these things felt, whether I want to feel them or not, and get over it and write the story. Because at the end of the day, I know if I had my own Eman that was older than me when I was a teenager or in my 20s, who could have said, you got it, you'll be okay, everything will be fine, it's okay to feel, it's okay to go through what you're going through, and that you're not alone, that might have changed my entire perspective over on things. And so I know it literally might be a matter of life and death for me to put this book out there for some other young woman who's struggling with being ill, doesn't know how to handle it, does all these self-destructive things because they don't know how to handle it, and they don't have anybody else around them that understands what they're going through. Like, it just seems like this would be an important book for someone like that. And I know if I had it, it would have made a huge difference for me. And so it's important for me to actually put it out there. And I need to just like, I'm always saying, you know, like, people need to get out of their own ways. I need to get out of my own way, get over myself, and do it, and not worry about how I'm feeling in the moment. Like if I need to sit and cry, then I have to fucking sit and cry. Like I need to just get over it and just get out there and do it. So it's, yeah. I can't put a timestamp on it just yet, but eventually. But eventually.
And you said that at other open mics before Stark Reality that they thought you were too much with your writing, or?
Yeah, years ago, I was going to this one. It was around Union Square, and they were like, "Could you not? You know, we might have children around. Could you not use any profanity?" And I'm just like, life is full of profanity, and also life has a lot of other fucked up shit going on. So if you're worried about your kids hearing cuss words, you might want to just put them in a fucking bubble away from everybody forever, because there's no way to avoid it. Like, put MTV on and you're going to see a lot worse on there than hearing fuck. Like, for real.
You said that Viviana's open mic, the Stark Reality, was the first one that was more accepting of your style.
Yeah, years ago when we were doing Wild Wednesdays, and then another poetry reading. I can't remember the name of it, but we were doing those, and you know, that was the first place. Like, I had always been like the type of person that was like, I'm gonna just do me and be honest and open and say whatever it is, and my mom was always like, no. Try not to cause any problems. Don't cause any trouble. And I was just like, how am I causing trouble by just being honest? And Viviana was the first person that I had that I met who was an adult when I was still technically a child at 15, who was like, no, you are perfectly fine doing what you're doing. Keep doing that. Keep being honest and open. Keep your voice loud and your voice heard. And I ran with it. I ran with it so hard. And my mom did not like Viviana at all. She did not like her because she saw like there was this woman who was being a motherly figure to me and encouraging my teenage angst, I guess you could call it. Like, encouraging it and telling me to just go do whatever it is that I wanted to do and that I could do it. And I feel like I needed that. Like, I needed someone to just say, you know what, do whatever it is that you want to do and do it to death. And, you know, and I always felt like I could go into the poetry reading and be like, I hate all those crackers. And she'd be okay with that. And not that I would do that, but she would be okay with that because it's supposed to be open for everyone to have whatever thoughts and ideas that they have. And mind you, like I said earlier, like, you don't always agree with people, but it doesn't make you hate anybody. Like, there used to be this guy, I don't even know if he's still alive or still around or whatever. And Viviana did not seem to like him, but she tolerated him. And he'd get up and he had this thick Ukrainian accent, or maybe Russian. He had a thick Slavic accent. And he'd get up and always be like, fuck this hole here, fuck this hole there. And I was just like, oh my God. Okay. That's awesome. And he felt the need to do it, talking about the extra gritty parts of New York. And he did it, and she welcomed him, and who knows if he's still around. I don't even remember his name.
Was that interesting, to hear about the grittier side, or because not too many people? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I knew about certain gritty parts, but it wasn't like I was hanging out in brothels where they were doing heroin and like, I didn't know anything about that.
So he was like Bukowski, like times 1,000 or something? Or?
Times 1,000, yes. Like extra. And he dressed the part all in black and, you know, tried to get me to come hang out with him when I was in my 20s. And I was just like, nah, bro. Nah, I'm not. I am not even a teeny bit interested in that. But thank you. appreciate it, but I'm not. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he's still out there cussing along. Maybe not. I don't know. But that's the point of Viviana's readings, that you can get up and do anything and everything, and you're welcome, because we're all there as a community of artists creating and doing our thing. And I always felt that she was, welcoming me. And she came, I mean, even when I was in the hospital, she came to see me a bunch of times, and we would just like sit there and write together or talk about stuff or any of that. And it was amazing to me that she still kept her energy while I was going through all this, I guess, traumatic shit or whatever. And that she was still present and still aware of it and okay with it. Like, she knew that my shine wasn't going to be dimmed by whatever stuff was going on with me. And she's treated me the same since the first time we met. And that's awesome and amazing. And I will always love and respect her. Like, she's one of my favorite people in the world.
And is your poetry similar to each other, or?
I think it's similar. I think that she is I can be direct, but she is way more direct than I am. And so I feel like she will say things right out there, and I will use a more poetic frame of reference to say whatever I'm saying. So they're similar, but not the same, but similar.
You talked a bit about the graphic novels, right? How is that? I mean, that's like a different genre writing you're doing.
Yeah, because I mean, when I was in high school, I was, I did a lot of photography and a lot of painting, and I still, occasionally, and I worked for a photo assistant in my mid-20s. And, this is the first time I've ever tried to like put together a whole storyboard with a graphic novel, and that's a whole other ball of wax from anything I've ever dealt with. But one day, this was a few years ago, I was probably in the hospital again for some crazy lupus thing, and I was just like, I must have been on Facebook playing or something, and I was just like, I should do a graphic novel. Ding! And because I was looking for more characters that actually had disabilities who were main characters, and I found barely any, like maybe two, and they weren't even main characters. They were just part of the main group of characters, but not the main character, and not featured very often. And I'm just like, this is kind of bullshit, and I'm not really feeling it, and I should just change that. And since I know so much about conspiracies and government stuff, and like, I know a good amount of things about being an amputee, I was like, well, I could just mix this stuff. And so I don't have a name for it, but I do have 7 pages done of the graphic novel. And so I'm trying to, because I know people who do publishing.
And do you do the drawing too, or is it just the writing and you're having an illustrator?
I'm doing very, very bad drawings. But I did have the drawings, and hopefully I will have an illustrator. But I did the writing, and I was trying to find, I bought this what was it called? This computer that did graphics. It was like a Samsung computer, but it lost the password, and it wasn't doing it didn't have the right programs for me to draw on it. So I think I might use my iPad, but I'm just doing everything in the notebook for now, get it out that way, and then I'll be like, here, make this look less like a 5-year-old did it, and hopefully it'll work out. But I like the story, and I also did like a 10-page children's book about an amputee who was new to being an amputee, and talked about how much she loved her new legs, and they made her so awesome and cool. And I was very catered towards little kids. Um, so it's both of them. And like I said in the beginning, I wish I could clone myself because there's so many different things that I want to do. But because I have a job and need to pay my bills and all this stuff, it kind of like takes the back burner. But I still carry it around with me. I always have my notebook. I always have my iPad. I always have my crochet stuff on me. Just in case I will have a minute to actually do something else. And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. It just depends on the day.
Is there like a difference with writing a writing a graphic novel and writing fiction in general, and then writing poetry that's more personal and real? Like, how does the process differ for each?
Well, I know from doing, because I've published the poetry chapbooks, and I've published articles and short stories and all that stuff. And so that's completely different from like when you're doing a graphic novel, it's got to be more conversational. And so that was really hard for me to like, okay, this has to fit into little boxes and little bubbles, and it has to be more like a personal conversation, or even if it's a monologue, it's got to be broken down in ways, as opposed to like when you're doing poetry or with a story, you can basically do whatever you want to do. And so that's been sort of a struggle with me, because as you can tell, I am very wordy. I can go on, and doing that in a graphic novel, you'll probably lose readers, and you might not have the people actually pay attention to the theme of the thing you're trying to say. So I when I started first working on this graphic novel, I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and then I went back and like chopped it up, because I didn't know how to just start from scratch with very little and move forward from there. So yeah, I mean, and also you have to find an artist who can draw whatever you're coming up with in that graphic novel. And I know artists, but you have to find an artist that you sort of have the right fit with, and that actually wants to do the stuff that you're doing. And so it's not like I have like the artists from The Walking Dead who are like, sure, let me do this with you. Like, I have like extra community folks. And like, I know people in publishing. I know people who actually help people to write books and get their stuff out there. But it's a whole different ball of wax when you're doing a graphic novel. And it's, but I'm determined. I'm determined to make it happen, and determined to like get it done. And I will get it done. It's going to take me a bit of time.
Nice. And I guess it's neat to like switch between the two, like using your imagination and writing fiction, and then talking about something real. Like,
oh yeah, totally. And I mean, when I was first working on it, I was just like trying to divorce myself from the story being told, because people were automatically assuming, oh, you're the amputee in the story. No, I'm not. I'm a completely different person from the character that I'm writing in this. And yes, we both happen to be amputees, but she's completely different from who I am. And, I'm writing from a place of, yes, I've been through this, and yes, I've dealt with it, but she's a completely different character from me.
So, I guess, like, any final thoughts or anything you'd like to say?
A while ago, probably a few months, no, yeah, this was before I started this job. So this was like eight-ish months ago. An amputee friend of mine told me that if you need to be a bitch to make your point, to get things done, to do whatever it is that you need to do to help folks and help yourself, do it and be it. And I try my best to be nice to people on a regular basis and not be a bitch, because I don't want anyone to be a bitch to me off the bat when I haven't done anything wrong, and it applies to everyone else. But I am I can be bitchy to people from time to time, or people think I'm automatically unapproachable. Even though people come up to me all the time, every single time I leave my house. So I don't know how I'm suddenly unapproachable. And the point of me saying this is that you have to be a strong-willed person to deal with all the shit that I've been dealing with for the last 17 years. Because aside from, I believe I said this at the poetry reading, like, of all the minorities that I'm in, being an amputee has been the one that I've been treated the worst. And people are always so surprised that I'm still, as one guy put it, that I'm so strong-willed. Like, how would that change because I don't have two legs and one knee? Like, that has nothing to do with that. And if anything, I've gotten more strong-willed because people are dicks, and I'm not going to have anyone trash talk me or treat me like a piece of crap because I don't have legs. And that goes for anybody dealing with whatever physical disability, mental disability, or any kind of anything. Like, don't let people walk all over you, period. Every single person deserves to be respected in this world. And it's sort of become my job to make people see disability in a completely different way. And, you know, I just want folks to realize and recognize that I am still a person, period. And every single person with a disability is still a person. And I'm not going anywhere. As you can tell, I'm very hard to kill. So, you know, I just want for people to be respectful to people with disabilities. And that's basically, if I could like stamp that on my head, like I totally would. But all I can do is go out in the world and be a smart ass and hope that people just see the jokes in the seriousness and, you know, recognize that I'm still a person. Like,
And that's why you were making that one character like very different from you, to just show that
well,
you're still
yeah,
very different people, even though you're both amputee. Yeah.
Yeah, and that people are different. Like, everybody's different, and just because someone is disabled or an amputee or in a wheelchair or whatever, that doesn't mean that they can't be an asshole. Like, people can be assholes no matter what their physical ailment is. And I have met tons of disabled folks who are straight up dicks. Don't give a shit about other people. Don't give a shit about whatever things that they're doing in the world. Don't give a shit about how they're coming off to people. And I don't know if it has anything to do with their disability. It might not. But they're just dicks. And I don't care. And it doesn't make you a saint because you're suddenly disabled. And it doesn't make you a saint because you've been disabled for a while. Like, the measure of someone's character has nothing to do with what's going on with them physically or emotionally. It has to do with the way they treat other people and how they are in the world. So, words to the wise. Don't be a dick. There you go.
So, yeah. So I'm glad we actually got to doing this. Like,
I
I know
know.
we had some technical difficulties at first. Like, we tried
Damn, New York
the
weather. Been here my whole life and I still don't like it. Yeah, and technological issues, that too. But mostly,
yeah. I mean, it might not have the best sound quality this episode, but I think the content was good. Like, we had a good BSing feel kind of conversational.
Totally.
Like, I'm still trying to find that like balance, like keeping it conversational, but like also interviewing and bringing the person out too. So.
Totally. And we can also always, like, when it gets a little warmer, we can meet up and do it in person, and make that happen. Like, when it's a little warmer, like, have a part 2.
Part 2. Wow. Maybe that's a setup for a sequel, a possible sequel. Okay, and yeah, I hope that was the interview. I hope you enjoyed it. So, yeah, if you want to keep updated with Eman Rimawi and her work, you could look up Eman Rimawi on Facebook. She has a Facebook page where she posts everything. It's EMANRIMAWI. And I'll also post a link to it in the description. So, yeah, and if you want to keep updated with future episodes of BSing with Sean K, go to bsingwithseank.blogspot.com. That's BSINGWITH SEANK.blogspot.com. And there's a link to my Twitter, my Facebook, my YouTube, and everything else. And that about does it for this episode. I'll catch you on the next one.